Hello and welcome to Book Bites with Maggie. This is season 2, episode 2, and today we're going to be talking about some historical fiction titles. We are going to play a little bit of a game today. So the goal of Book Bites is to be very interactive. So we would like you to claim titles that interest you. We can put those on hold for your Napanee Public Library card, and we can bring those out to you curbside pickup as we're currently closed for browsing. We're offering curbside pickups from 10 until 6 Monday through Friday currently. So if any of these titles pique your interest, let us know in the comments. Again, this is live interactive here on social media, so just give us a shout out. We can put those books aside for you. Or if there's other titles that might be mentioned, let us know and we can, again, pull those things for you and get them set aside. As we're kind of featuring all of the nonfiction titles that really piqued my interest for the late 2019 and 2020 year, I was asked to kind of do a challenge. So I'm gonna have you guys guess in the comments how many books you think I read in 2020, and along with that, how many of those books were historical fiction, which is what we're speaking of today. So at any point while we're talking about those books today, you can take a guess at those two numbers, how many I read in 2020 and how many of those were historical fiction titles. Again, the ones that we're mentioning today are just a few of the favorites. So many times people don't realize that movies and TV shows are actually based on books. So I have a couple here that I'm not gonna specifically highlight as being ones that I read, but books that are currently on our shelves, so that if you've watched them, maybe you'd wanna have a chance to read them and actually get more of the story. So obviously the Outlander series here by Diana Gabaldon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. This is a large series in our collection. It is currently available. Starts with book 1 and there are several. So if these are shows that you have watched and enjoyed and you want to read those, just give us a shout out here in the comments, let us know and we can pull those aside for you. Also very popular right now is the Bridgerton series. This again is a book series first before it went to Netflix, and it starts with The Duke and I. This is book 3, but we can put you on hold for any of the titles that you wish to read. If you want the first, second ones, we'll put you on hold for them. But we do have these on the shelves as well. So similar to how Netflix is filming, each Bridgerton has their own book, and on the show they have their own season. So keep that in mind if you want to read those.
Book 3 is Benedict's book.
Is Benedict's book?
Yes.
Okay. Are they pretty good?
Yes. The Bridgerton books are amazing.
Yeah. I think just like reading historical fiction and then like reading about the wardrobe is really what fascinates me. So an author can grip me, and even without pictures kind of describing the clothes that they're wearing and stuff like that, a great author can really make you feel like you're in the story. So don't forget, you are adding in the comments if you want any of the titles. Let us know if your screen name is different than what your library card name might be, so that we can match those up and get them on hold for you. I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing some of the titles that stood out to me from recent reads that were historical fiction. Again, these ones are currently available, so we can get those available to you. This is one that I have recommended numerous times to my friends. This is Finding Dorothy by Elizabeth Letts. You recognize the name Dorothy because obviously Frank L. Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz, but this is the story told from the perspective of Maud, which would be Frank's widow, the author of the book. And it's historical fiction, so they've taken snippets of things that they know to be true from history and they've written a story around it. So in the back it actually tells you specifically what items made the story spin around here in the afterword. There's it really builds it together. But this story is the story of Maud, who after Frank's passing, she gets invited to, well, she kind of invites herself, but gets invited to Hollywood to view Judy Garland and the rest of the cast as they're filming her husband's book-turned-movie. And some of the things in this story, they take her back to when her and Frank were a young couple, and the struggles that they had growing up financially. And then what brought them together in a marriage, and all the job changes and how the Depression impacted their lives and the people around them and their community, and the character who Dorothy is based on in the story. And so when there's lots of reflections, but then there's also what would be considered current day, which would be the 1930s, where Maud is, you know, in her late 70s, and she's there in Hollywood on the set, and she meets the real Judy Garland, and she sees how she's being treated not only by her mother, but as a female actress in a time where they're not really respected yet. You know, she's expected to look younger than she is because of casting, so she has to bind her breasts, she has to you know, cry and be emotional on command. So seeing the inside part of Hollywood paired with the story behind where the Wizard of Oz and the story and the books came from was really a unique telling for me. So again, this is historical fiction. It is not a biography, so there are some liberties being taken, but how they pull it all together is just really interesting. Elizabeth Lett's Finding Dorothy. We do have this one. This that I'm holding is large print, so we have this one on the shelf. We also have it as an e-book and an e-audio book. Both would be available on our Northeast Indiana Digital Library on Libby and Overdrive. So we've got that in additional formats for you as well. So if this is one you want, let us know in the comments. Well, maybe it's been 2 years ago. I don't remember. The Fault in Our Stars, when did that come out? That's the wrong book. The Giver of the Stars.
Giver of the Stars.
That was like 2018.
No, Giver by Jojo Moyes.
Yeah.
That came out last year.
Was it only last year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So The Giver of the Stars is a book that we were asked for constantly. It was on the old shelf and going in and out of the library very, very often. When it first came out, everybody was talking about it. Everybody wanted to read it. I believe it was even like on some news shows and things like that where people were talking this book up. That story is about the pack horse librarians of the Appalachian Mountains. And while that story was fantastic and it was great, this one has a similar theme. This is the Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek. I have mentioned this one on a Book Bites program previously as a recent read, but this one is by Kim Michelle Richardson, and it also is about the pack horse librarians in Kentucky. But I felt like this story, while it shared that pack horse theme, this one had a lot more to it. So if you read the one and enjoyed it, this one might be one that will pique your interest as well. This story not only talks about, you know, delivering mule side, trying to get these books into people via the Pack Horse Librarian Program, which was a new government program at the time, but it also features the Blue People of Kentucky. So if you have never heard of them, it was like a recessive blood disorder that ailed a lot of the people that lived in the Appalachian Mountains, and they didn't really know much about it. And so the main character in this story, Cussie, or as the people that she delivers books to, they call her Blewett. She's not only trying to be a trailblazer and getting the books into the hands of the people that need them, but she's also really exposing herself when most people that suffer from her condition are definitely more recluse. They stay withdrawn into them. And there's a romance too, but that doesn't totally take over the storyline. So this one, if you liked The Giver of the Stars and you wanted to know more about the theme of the Pack Horse Librarians, this is one that you should have on your radar. I thoroughly enjoyed this one even more than that book, but they are very different. They just have a similar theme to them. So again, this is Kim Michelle Richardson's The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek. This one we have as a physical book here. We also have it as an ebook and an e-audiobook, same as Finding Dorothy, on Libby and Overdrive. If you need help accessing that with your Napanee Public Library card, the librarians are here answering the phones from 10 until 6. Let us know if you need help accessing those free digital materials with your library card.
And I misspoke. Giver of the Stars came out in 2019.
Wow, I feel like that was so long ago.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking it was at least 3 or 4 years old. So if you didn't hear Martha, The Giver of the Stars came out in 2019. This one came out after that. The next book that I want to share with you is even older. This book is going to be set in the 1730s, 1740s. And this book is about a young girl who, her family has just relocated over from France, and they own several plantations. And the father, he is very invested in the war. And so he overextends their financial means, puts up their multiple plantations as bartering to help fund the war, and then leaves. And he leaves his 16-year-old daughter, Eliza, to kind of oversee the plantation. And in the 1700s, like, women are to be seen and not heard. They are not to be taking care of multiple plantations and all of the workers and the slaves and the house staff. And they're not going to be listened to. They're not going to be respected. For Eliza's father to turn around and leave her ailing mother and her to kind of take over these plantations on their own while he's off gallivanting around trying to support the war, it really put Eliza in a predicament. And she soon realizes how few funds they have and how this is going to be a problem. They can't operate their plantations with no money. And so with a lot of brainstorming and trying to figure out what to do, she learns about the lucrative crop of indigo dye. But it's not just something that you can Google in the 1700s and figure out how to make this something. And she finds out that some of the slaves that live on her plantation, they know this ancient art of how to make indigo dye, how to raise the crops, how to harvest them, and it's very, very specific. And she finds out that this is something that they can do, but it's something that she needs to barter with them. And the slaves, more than anything, they want to learn and they want to be valued in their own rights. And so they come up with a trade, something that probably wouldn't have come across very well at all. So Eliza decides that she is going to teach these slaves how to read in return for them showing her how to make money and how to save her father's plantations making indigo dye, because the French are paying big money for this dye. So this is a wonderful story, not only of the racial interactions, but of the trust and the family bonds that really build the characters. So this one is probably the oldest one in my stack, or one of the oldest. Again, the 1700s plantation work. And this story is based on a real Eliza who really did make a lucrative earning of indigo dye. And when she died, George Washington was even a pallbearer at her funeral. So that alone shows what an impact she made on history and that time period. Don't forget, in the comments you are trying to make a guess on how many books I read in 2020, as well as how many of those were going to be historical fiction titles. If you want to give a guess, you can get major kudos for getting the closest to that one. I have a couple titles left for you, but I want to take this time to remind you that the library is currently closed for browsing. But if you see any titles that we're mentioning here, or if you have just a genre that you enjoy reading, you can let us know by calling the library or emailing curbside@napanilibrary.org. The staff are checking and receiving phone calls 10 until 6 Monday through Friday, and we can bring those items together, check them out to your library card, and then bring them to you in the parking lot in our curbside parking spots. So don't be afraid to ask if you want something. We still want to get the materials into your hands the best way that we can. The Indigo story, this one here, we have also in 3 different formats. This one as a physical book, an ebook, and an e-audio. So you have those options of not leaving your house and still having that one as well. This is a book that I wanted to share with you that was on my TBR shelf for a long time, my to-be read shelf. This story was actually recommended to me multiple times, that it was my aunt who got me to finally pick it up. Before We Were Yours is another one that has been all over the media. It was a New York Times bestseller. Lisa Wingate, the author of this story, I've read multiple books that she has written. She is quite the famous author in the religious fiction genre. And so this one felt very outside of the norm for me. And when I read the cover jacket about what this one was going to be about, I felt like at that time in my life, real life was scarier than I needed to read something that happened in history. History could be scary on its own. So to read historical fiction, you kind of have to be in the mindset of escaping to that reality when that reality might not be someplace that you want to really visit. So books can do that. They can give you that escape that you need, but you have to be aware that that reality might not be any better than the scary real life version of life that you're living right now. This story centers around Georgia Tann, who is the director of the Children's Tennessee Home Society, and she made national headlines in real life when the court case kind of came to light. She was stealing children and putting them in her children's home and then basically selling them and adopting them out to rich families all over the United States, not only destroying families, but really messing with like the mental state of these children that were coming from homes that were fine. Their parents just weren't around or were stolen right out of their front yards and made to believe that they weren't wanted anymore by their families. They were made to feel like they had done something wrong, and then they were split up. If they were in family groups, they were split up and they were sold and given to families all over the place. And I don't want to give the story away, but so many of these children did not get a better life than what they would have had with their own loving families. And it all comes together, but this story features a fictional family that lived in a shanty boat, but you follow the siblings and how they're split up and their time in the Tennessee Children's Home Society, and you grapple towards what really happened in history and how could this possibly have happened underneath the noses of so many people. But politicians and judges and all sorts of people who felt like they were doing right by adopting children who were unwanted had no idea that these children were actually stolen from families that were already established and being replaced. So this story actually made for a bigger investigation. The children who read this story and then realized that Georgia Tann and the Children's Home Society was part of their own histories actually came together. And there is a second book that Lisa writes with an investigative journalist where they actually bring some of these children back together and they tell their real stories. So while this one is historical fiction based on a real event but features a made-up family, if you want to hear stories from real children, that one is called Before and After, and that one is also in our collection, but it makes a lot of references to this book. So you want to read this one first. If you've already read this one and you want that real-life snapshot, Before and After is that second story, and I'm not sure if the physical book is here in our collection, but I do know we have it on Niddle as well, so Libya and Overdrive. Before We Were Yours, this one is available in actually 4 formats. We have it here as the physical book, we have it as a book on CDs or discs that you can check out and play on a CD player, and then the ebook and the e-audio. But again, you want to read this one before you read Before and After because of the tie-ins. It makes more sense if you read them in that order.
We do have it, the Before and After. It's available right now.
It's up on the shelf?
Yeah.
Okay, so Martha just said Before and After is physically here in the library, so we can have that one available for curbside pickup as well if you want to read that one. The second story that I have by Lisa Wingate, same author, she really broke down barriers in her own writing by writing this book that she kind of took on another endeavor. And this one is going to be considered like a time slip novel where it's Civil War era and then what would be considered present day in the book, but it's really like the 80s, 1980s. So this book is about a school teacher who is burdened by her school loans. She takes a job that really nobody else wants, moves to the backwoods and gets a job in a country schoolhouse that nobody else wants. And the story kind of involves the letters from slaves who were, in the Underground Railroad or in different places as they were split up and spread throughout the country across different plantations and things like that. Just like in the Indigo Girl, we noticed that a lot of these slaves, they didn't have the means to read and write. And so when you are split up, your knowledge in your head is really all that you have that can connect you to your family history. So when you would come across somebody who would be willing to share your history and to try to help you navigate your family tree and figure out where you came from and maybe where your parents or your siblings, where they might be in relation to different plantations, there was something called like the lost books, or there was like newspaper articles where people would put out like an SOS, or they'd pay for little billings in these newspapers where they could say, this is my name, this is who I believe my parents are and where they were last seen. And they would leave these like articles in newspapers and in different places so that they could try to get back together with their families. In this story, that part of history is woven into the story. So you get to see these little snapshots inside of what is happening to half of the characters. So there's some who are trying to escape from slavery and are put in precarious situations. So there's a daughter who is of the plantation owners, her half sibling who is half Creole and half white. Her plantation owner is her father. So they share a father, they have different mothers, and because of the varying skin tones, they are treated totally differently. And they find themselves off on their own. And this book, both of them had such strong emotions as I was reading them, but this one totally enamored me. So as you're reading about this story and you hear about these characters and what it's like to be a slave and to be treated the way that you are, and to see somebody who is literally your half sibling being treated differently because of the color of their skin, the emotions and the relationship around those characters is intense. It's extremely intense. And then to have this school teacher in the 1980s learning about this history, you feel like you're connected to it because you're hearing an outside perspective learning about it too. So you don't feel like you're so disconnected from what happened. I read this book in 2 days, and I need to reread it and like take more time to process it, but I was so like, I need to find out what's happening, that I just, this book. So anyway, I don't want to give it all away, but the story about a teacher and like the new community that she finds herself in, totally embracing the history and doing something about it. This is just a great story. Lisa hit the nail on the head. She, if you read this one and you enjoyed it, try this next one. The physical book itself is large print, so it's a fast read. Large print, it's exactly the same. It's not abridged. You have the exact same book. It just has larger text inside of it. So it's very fast. It'd probably be like, 2/3 this size if it was in normal text. But you get these little excerpts inside of it that you can see those newspaper clippings throughout the book. And this one, it just features a teacher that definitely made her mark on not only her classroom, but her community as a whole. So these are the ones I wanted to feature today. If you've got any other historical fiction titles that you think that I would enjoy, please let me know. I definitely take those into account, and I like to read books that others have recommended to me. It is not my go-to genre. So for those of you who have placed any guesses, did we have any guesses in the comments? We have 2 guesses. This is not one that I read a lot of, historical fiction, mostly because the ones that I'm drawn to are not that escape from reality that I need. They are books that make me think, and I don't always want that. Sometimes I just need something easy to read. So I have to really be in that mindset to read historical fiction. But I hope that you enjoyed some of these titles that I shared today. I read over 150 books last year, and 21 of those were what you would consider historical fiction. But that also includes the Little House on the Prairie series that I read with my children last year. So all of those would be included in that number. So yeah, I hope that you got some titles that you can write down today. Who was our closest guest? Did anybody guess 21?
So Candace Bernard Flucky guessed 115 books and 20 historical fiction. So she was close to the historical
and
fiction.
This book came as a recommendation from her. So well done, Candace. You did a good job guessing. I have not read these yet, so I will have to get them on my radar soon. I know you told me about them so many years ago, and I will get to them soon. I promise. Absolutely promise. Okay, and our other guest was?
I don't remember. 160 books, but only 14 historical fiction.
Oh, that was close. Who did that one?
Michaela.
Me. So our videographer made a guess too. She was good. That was really, really close. So yeah, I think I've said it multiple times, but these books are available. Let us know if you want any of them and we can get them to you. Candace, make sure you check out your local library. I know you're not here anymore. We miss you. Hopefully some of these titles, if they piqued your interest, you'll be able to access them at your library. And I think that is all. I will see you next time for another Book Bites with Maggie with another genre. In February, we're going to highlight romances and short stories and recent reads. So I hope to see you at our next Book Bites. Have a great day. Bye.
And special thanks to Martha.
Woohoo!
Say hi.
Hello.
You can also catch her podcast, Evie's History Bites, that went live this morning. So make sure you check that out on Google and what's the other one? Apple Play Store. You can get the apps to hear.
It's also on Audible.
Oh, and on Audible.
And Spotify.
And Spotify. So 4 platforms. We've got all the info that you need to not only learn about historical fiction, but also the real life history of Napanee, Indiana. Okay, see you later. Bye.